With all of my high-resolution sculpted geometry exported from Blender and saved in its own FBX file, I now can turn my attention to the low-resolution version of this character. Like the other ones, I need to go in and examine what I want to keep and what I want to reduce the polygonal load to ensure that it's going to work and flow through the rest of the production pipeline. I think I've decided for the shell, and as a reminder, I have two different objects each with their own multi-resolution modifier. With the shell, I think I'm going to put this down to level 0. Yeah, I think this is a good amount. This has got about 13,000 polygons on it, which is going to be just enough. And if I change my mind, if it's not enough, if I need level 1, I could always come back to my project file here in Blender and export out level 1, and everything will be just fine. So this is the cool thing about this multi-resolution modifier, is that we can customize the modifier to get the number of polygons that we're desiring to keep. So I like level 0. I'm going to apply my modifier. I'm in object mode. There we go. All right, same thing for the body. For the body, I think I want level 1. That's going to give me a good amount of detail for the base of the mesh of the geometry. All this lovely high resolution information has been saved in the high res sculpted FBX, so I know I'm not losing any of that information, and it's already been preserved over in that other file. Like the shell, let's apply the modifier, and we're good to go. Now, as I practice, whenever I apply my modifiers, I always go in and apply all of my transforms real fast for both these objects. That way, there's nothing influencing this. If you look at the item transform information, there's no transformation, there's no modifiers. These are just straight up polygons, which makes the exporting of this a whole lot easier. Okay, with all the modifiers applied, we can turn our attention to creating some materials. These materials are really the core of the entire texturing system. The materials are Substance Painter's way of separating out all the polygons, and it will help us determine and target which polygons are going to get which specific texturing illusions inside of the app itself. So they're critical parts. Without the modifiers, it goes a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and create them. I'm going to be working on my turtle shell. And this little icon in our tool properties is going to bring open the materials that are associated with this particular object. Lambert 1 is the default material that came from Maya, so we don't need that one anymore. And let's go ahead and hit the plus sign and add a new slot and give it a good name. As one might imagine, I'm just going to call this one shell. And we'll do the same thing for the body. We'll get rid of the default Lambert. Goodbye. We'll create a new one, give it a good name, and we'll call this one body. There we go. Now, we haven't assigned any of these materials to the polygons. So the next step is to jump over into edit mode and start working with the individual polygons. Now for the body, I have a whole bunch of discontiguous pieces. I got the fingernails, I got the body itself, the eyes. If I go into X-ray mode, which is this icon right here inside of my interface, I can do a box select and select through and grab everything inside the scene. In edit mode, you'll be able to use the existing polygonal selection to assign the material to those polygons. You're only going to see this row here pop up if you're in edit mode. Let's go ahead and assign the polygons to that material. I'm going to drop this selection and test that assignment by choosing the select button, which is automatically going to select all the polygons that have now been assigned to the body material, which is pretty good. Let's do the exact same thing over here on my turtle shell. It's already selected for me. Thank you, I appreciate that. And let's assign the selection to this material. We'll test it like we did before, and things are working the way we like. Now, in addition to creating the materials, we also have to prepare the UV maps. If we jump over into the UV editing tab, you can see that I've already generated the UVs for the entirety of this sculpture. Here's all the shell UVs, looking pretty good. And if we go over into the body, there's all the body UVs. Now, if you click on one of these objects instead of your own sculpture and you don't see the UVs, don't freak out. If you go to the UV Editor Tool tab, this little button right here is what you want to choose, this little double arrow. It's going to sync the selected objects on the right and only show what's selected. If it's blue, then it's just going to show all the UVs. Let me show you if it's off. See how it looks like the UVs are gone until I start selecting stuff? Yeah, I like to have this on. That way I just always see my UVs inside of my scene. Okay. So we know we have UVs that are on different objects. We want to make sure that when we combine these objects, all of those UVs are combined correctly as well. Because at the end of the day, both of these objects are going to get combined into one object, okay? And I want to make sure that all that wonderful UV information is preserved inside the mix as well. So here's how we do it. It's pretty straightforward. I'm in the turtle body object, and I've gone into my my vertex information data properties tab, this little green triangle object, and we have a category here called UV maps, and this is going to show us all the UV maps that have been assigned to a specific object. On these particular objects, each have their own UV map. Here's the shell, and if I go into the body, you can see that it says turtle body. When we combine these objects, we also want to combine the UVs, and the way that Blender does this is really rudimentary. If both of the UV maps on the separate objects are named the exact same thing, they'll get combined into one UV map. If they're named different, it's going to keep those UV maps separate, which is what we don't want. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to name this, as one might imagine, I'm just going to name this turtle UVs. And I'm going to select all of those characters and copy them. That way, I can paste them into the name of this other guy. See how it's called turtle shell? Well, I want it to be also called turtle UVs. That way, when I combine them, all of this UV information stays where it is. Let's go ahead and do it real fast. I'm going to go into object mode. I'm going to grab the shell first, and then the body second. And then inside the viewport, I'm going to hit Command J, which is going to combine all these together. Now, check it out. Turtle UVs has remained. Because I named both of the UV maps on their separate objects the exact same thing, they were all combined into one UV map at the conclusion of that join operation. Let's go ahead and test it. I'm going to return into edit mode, and there they all are. Now, it looks like one gigantic hot mess, but don't worry. If we look at the materials are now responsible for filtering and separating out where these textures are going to go. I have two materials, which is what we want, on one object. If I select the shell material and hit select, you can see that it automatically selects all those UVs. They're in the exact same location as they were just a moment ago. Substance Painter is going to be doing the exact same thing. It's going to be recognizing this shell material and automatically assigning it its own texture set. Once you see it over in Substance Painter, I think it's going to click, but it's good that we have it all working here pretty quickly inside of Blender. So with all of this information done, we've applied our modifiers, we've created materials, we've renamed our UV maps, we're ready to export out this turtle body project file as an FBX. Let's do it. Let's return to object mode. Just make sure it's selected. And at the top of the screen here, we're going to File, Export, FBX. Since this is a relatively low-res file, it'll go pretty fast. Please make sure that you're marking it. Do some good media management and put the word low or just some sort of indicator that this is now going to be the version of the project that we're going to texture over in Substance Painter. Let's export the FBX file. Just takes a second. And now we're prepped and ready to roll to create all of our textures over inside of Substance Painter.